Right.
When Donald Trump entered U.S. politics, one of his mainstream entrances into U.S. politics, and I hope you guys would agree, was him claiming that President Obama wasn't born in America. That was one of his big issues in about like 2011, 2012,
True.
as he
Yeah.
was ramping up. Yeah, 4 years before he ran. A few months ago, he said that Rob Reiner died of Trump derangement syndrome. Can you point to me any Democrat that has done something as divisive as either of those things I pointed out 15 years apart?
This. I sense, zooming out here, a broader like snowflake problem on the MAGA right now, right? Whether it is Bad Bunny and being outraged, whether it's demanding that people come before Congress, or whether it's like freaking out and retaliating against the Associated Press because they're not going to use Gulf of America. I am sensing, and I'm hearing from a lot of people that a lot of the increasing sentiment on the right seems to be kind of reminiscent of that snowflake mentality. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there is a portion of the right, especially kind of the more populist part of the right, that is leaning into that. There is a group, I would say, kind of more at large, that is suggesting that now that the right is in power, that it needs to play by the same rules that the left played by during the Biden administration. So, for example, the Daily Signal, which I'm the national correspondent for, was kicked out of the White House press room during the Biden administration. And this was something that we obviously tried, very hard to rectify. And they did the exact same thing with the Associated Press that the Trump administration is doing now, which, by the way, I disagreed with. I think the Associated Press, like all other news outlets, should be in the White House. Again, I also, regarding kind of their pool selection, I was happy to see Axios finally added to that pool selection instead of a bunch of publications, many of which don't service the broader, kind of country as a whole, to our earlier conversation. But regarding this idea that now everything needs to be performative, yeah, I'm really against a lot of that. This is one of the reasons why I was so much more a fan of, for example, Tom Homan, or maybe even some elements. Again, I have a couple asterisks there with Scott Bessent, particularly Brooke Rollins. I also quite like a lot of her approaches. A lot of Secretary of State Rubio's, the disapproving, kind of disappointed dad when the nonsense arises. It's much more effective as a political tactic. Biden was able to use this very effectively a couple of times. And when he did, instead of the crazy phone that certain other members of his administration would tend to pick up and use, or again, Congress with its committees on camera is just devolved into a circus from hell. Yeah, I think there is a portion of the right that's adopting to that, although I do have hopes that there is some of that is kind of on its way out. The age of influencers is starting to ebb.
Adam, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, to be fair, we had it on our side. We had people who wanted their safe spaces. I don't fully buy into the idea that there's a parallel between the way Trump has treated the media and Biden has treated the media. I think Trump has ramped it up a few notches, but Trump himself said, you said there's like a growing contingent of people who hopefully aren't acting in this way. Trump himself was the one that really freaked out about this on Truth Social. He said, nobody understands a word this guy is saying. The dancing is disgusting. The show is a slap in the face to our country. I think 48 hours after this, he posted a video of Obama and his wife as gorillas. I think the president has to lead in a top-down manner in order to tone down the divisiveness in this country. Could you agree with that Trump might be uniquely divisive in this moment?
Do I think that Trump is uniquely divisive? I do, given that he's a Hollywood entertainment guy who comments on Hollywood entertainment things. I mean, ever since he came down the golden escalator, he's been very out there and he's willing to get and throw stones.
He's a Hollywood entertainer, but he's also the president of the United States. These words mean a lot. I'm 23 years old, and I've always wanted to look to the president as someone who I can, look up to as a beacon of moral clarity. Mm-hmm. And when he's posting gorilla AI images of former presidents, he's calling for the arrest of J.B. Pritzker. Which I live in the state of Illinois.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I didn't know you were in Illinois. Oh, yeah. I'm right next door to you in Indiana. I was getting ready to say, we're right next. We'll have to grab lunch sometime.
Yeah, I grew up in Valpo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry. Keep going. Keep debating.
Oh, no. Sorry. I've attended a couple football games in Valpo. Great place. Anyway, aside from, the Midwesterners finding each other in the middle of a debate, in this context regarding Trump, no, I understand the idea and the desire to look up to the president of the United States. Absolutely. But I believe that one of the best descriptions of Trump has been he is, in fact, a product of the political dissociation of the time, meaning that as things continued, we had these two essential groups in the country, kind of the older guard. You could maybe equate Biden to this, maybe not on the left. On the right, you had some Republican senators and representatives that essentially would just say, let's not get hasty about anything. And they never really took an emotional stance on anything. They never were willing to call out things that, for example, we've seen AOC call out from the left side of the party, or from the right side, the many now very loud voices who have called out things that they don't appreciate on the cultural side as well as the economic side. And Trump, because so much of the aughts into the early teens were a clamping down, nothing is wrong, everything is fine, let's not get hasty, that eventually Trump, who had the platform and the performance to get out there and do things with a sledgehammer, meant that America elected the sledgehammer. And I don't always like the sledgehammer. There are times I prefer a scalpel. But to claim that this is somehow, well, Trump needs to act more presidential. Sure. Do I wish the president would put the phone down? Yeah. Do I wish he'd watch videos all the way to the end? So if he just wants to post some weird election fraud video from Detroit, he posts that instead of the ending screen cap where just 1 second is the gross video auto played behind it. Sure. I would love that. But again, a symptom of the time that America elected a boisterous guy to knock things over because America was tired of the way that things have been done for 20, 30 years in the country. I can't change that. That's an objective reality.
I think it's almost reverse. And I'm going to bring this back to Bad Bunny in just one moment. But
sure.
Donald Trump is, yes, a symptom of an American system that was failing the average voter. And I do agree that he did come and purge the Republican Party of like neocons or people who were more risk averse. Absolutely. In fact, the Democratic Party is still very risk averse. I think the Democrats need someone who's a little bit less risk averse, but that's different than what Trump is doing. The way that Trump, yet you wish that he would not post guerrilla videos of former presidents, but I wish that he wouldn't be posting AI images of Chicago being invaded with Black Hawk helicopters going over. I'm living and working in Chicago. I don't like to see that type of imagery. I wish he wouldn't be calling for the arrest of governors. He called Tim Walz a retard. I just don't think this is the way that you should operate as the president, and to just chalk it up as him being a little bit divisive or a little bit. So to bring this back to Bad Bunny,
go ahead.
Bad Bunny had a show where the background said love is stronger than hate. That's the only thing I've written down. It just says love is strong. I don't know why I wrote that
down.
The
Levi Jeans banner at the top of the stadium.
Sorry, what's up?
The Levi Jeans banner at the top of the stadium. Love is stronger than hate.
It sounds like love is stronger than hate. Okay. Yeah, and Donald Trump's reaction was that was a slap in the face to the country.
So this is where I would argue that a lot of that framing is a form of gaslighting. There are a lot of people in the country on both sides of the political aisle who, out in front, when they choose to, they will put on the face of, oh, I am a respectable politician. You see this in committee, right? Where we just saw, for example, with Pam Bondi, both sides, complete train wreck, Republicans, Democrats, Bondi, all of them acted like children. Almost every single person in that committee room acted like a child. And what's always right there at the front, and this is why I point this out as gaslighting, is that once they're tired of the theatrics, what do they start doing? They take off their screaming. They've been yelling at each other. They go, oh, Mr. Chairman, if we will return to Robert's Rules of Order number 542, they did not address me as the representative from the great state or wherever. That's nonsense. Either you are going to be serious or we're going to allow the facade of the structured American politician to have a level of leniency. And again, I point that out because you can't have it where Biden is, cracking jokes about ice cream and other things like a normal person, and then turn around and then be called ridiculous, doddering old fool. No humanity, has to be stately president, and then turn around all of a sudden when he is a stately president and then criticize that as being fake. I think that there are some double standards of gaslighting. The love is hate thing, or stronger than hate, in this particular Super Bowl thing, that's gaslighting. It's that if you don't claim that this is all love and wonderful, then therefore you must be for hate.
What was hateful about it?
I don't futz with that. I'm
it is all that I'm making. Very lovely. But I guess I have a question for you. I think you're the one doing the gaslighting in this moment.
Tony's defense of all of this is genuinely fascinating to me, and I do not mean that as a compliment. His argument essentially boils down to America was frustrated, the system was failing people, and so they elected someone who operates like a sledgehammer. Tony literally said America elected the sledgehammer, and I get it. I actually understand the frustration that drives that kind of thinking. When institutions feel broken and politicians feel untouchable, people reach for whoever promises to break things. That is a real human response, and it has happened throughout history. But here is where the sledgehammer argument completely falls apart. A sledgehammer does not have a target. It just swings. And when Adam pointed out that he wished the posting of AI images of Chicago being invaded by Black Hawk helicopters would stop, that is not a policy disagreement. That is not frustration with a broken system. That is a leader using imagery to paint an American city full of American people as an enemy territory. Chicago is not a foreign country. The people living there are not invaders, and the person responsible for that imagery is the same person wrapping himself in the language of unity and patriotism. You have to understand something about the psychology of what is happening here. There is a well-documented pattern in political history where leaders use imagery and language to frame certain groups of their own citizens as threats. It does not start with violence. It starts exactly like this, with pictures, with labels, with the slow normalization of seeing certain cities or communities as problems to be dealt with rather than people to be represented. History has shown us repeatedly what happens when that kind of language goes unchecked and unchallenged. And then Tony tries to flip the entire framing by calling the halftime show messaging gaslighting. Tony said, if you do not claim that this is all love and wonderful, then therefore you must be for hate. But that is not what happened. Nobody said you have to love the halftime show. Nobody said disagreeing with it means you hate people. What people are saying is that the reaction to a show built around unity, a show where someone literally held an American flag and said, God bless America, should not be met with guerrilla imagery and deportation calls 2 days later. That is the contradiction. And calling attention to a contradiction is not gaslighting. It is just paying attention.
I guess a very simple
Shock of
question.
shocks.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, we disagree on that. But
Right.
when Donald Trump entered U.S. politics, one of his mainstream entrances into U.S. politics, and I hope you guys would agree, was him claiming that President Obama wasn't born in America. That was one of his big issues in about like 2011, 2012.
True.
As he was ramping up. Yeah, 4 years before he ran. A few months ago, he said that Rob Reiner died of Trump derangement syndrome. Can you point to me any Democrat that has done something as divisive as either of those things I pointed out 15 years apart, the birtherism or the Rob Reiner comment? Has Biden or Obama or any Democrat in power done anything like that, or are you the one gaslighting?
No, I'd point to several Democrat congressmen and women who have said equally gross things regarding the sexual abuse of certain members over on the right. I could point, of course, to the mockery of, for example, the violence against Rand Paul, the tut-tutting about that. Of course, I could point to the comments made by certain congresswomen about 9/11
What was your
and
first
Islamic
example,
terror
Tony?
Who
attacks.
mocked Rand Paul again?
Well, hang on. Let's talk about these one at a time. Tony, what was the
Sure.
first thing you mentioned? Could you say specifically what you're talking about?
Yeah. So specifically, over the last couple of years, there have been calls for members of Congress to, for example, denounce certain acts against, for example, federal law enforcement. And you've had individuals who have claimed, for example, like Maxine Waters, that you need to get out there and that you need to intervene with federal law enforcement. You need to get in their faces. That, again, she laughed when asked at one point about the death of an Indiana congresswoman. I remember that vividly because I knew Jackie Walorski very well. I found that to be particularly gross. As far as, again, the mocking of individuals who had been killed in the line of duty, the members of Congress, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez waving off the deaths of American soldiers down at the border.
These are
kind of thing.
platitudes. When did AOC wave off the deaths? When did Democrats wave off the deaths of people who are
So,
certified?
all right, to be clear and to be fair, I don't have a Microsoft Excel list of all
Wait a
of
minute,
these
you just said
events
that I
in
was
particular and in place.
gaslighting you about divisiveness in America, but I just gave you two good examples that we can all
Yes,
agree
you gave
on.
me
Rob
two
Reiner,
examples of the president of the United States.
15 years
Absolutely.
apart.
And then you said, can you name any over on the left? And I listed from the top of my mind, these are things that do, in fact, come to my mind
They
particularly.
were platitudes. There were
that
no
are
real
prominent.
examples. Like Rand Paul. Can you go back to the Rand Paul one?
Yeah.
Who made
So,
fun of Rand Paul?
yeah. So regarding Rand Paul, so Rand Paul was attacked by a
I remember
neighbor.
the neighbor. Yeah.
And then the Senator Tim Kaine, right? Kaine of Virginia, about a month and a half later, made a passing joke about hoping that he didn't get attacked by anybody walking out of his house. That's kind of a gross thing to say.
Yeah, I don't think that you should make jokes like that, but I think that what Trump has done, I think that that's like a grain of sand on a beach, what Tim Kaine said. And what Donald Trump has done is created the whole beach. Donald Trump has a sandcastle of division that he has built about Rob Reiner to Obama being a birther and everything in between. I mean, Maxine Waters shouldn't have said, get in the face of Trump supporters. Yeah, but the idea that these two are equally divisive is wild. And again, I want to keep bringing this back to the Bad Bunny show. I just think the Republicans are the ones that are acting uniquely divisive after this in a top-down way. When it was a show that was centered around unity, and Republicans are calling, not all Republicans, I'm not saying everyone's being divisive, but when Republicans are taking this divisive stance, it's a pattern that I see time and time again.